What's up guys, my name's Brandon and today we have a big video. So we're going to be comparing every iOS version from iOS 1 all the way to the most recent iOS 15. So this is going to give us a closer look at how much Apple's mobile operating system has improved over the past 15 years. Alright, so let's take a trip down memory lane. So starting off with iOS 1, which was released in 2007. This was Apple's first version of iOS, which was actually called iPhone OS when it was released. And this, of course, is on the original iPhone 2G. And you can see here, it's pretty bare bones. I mean, you could not change the wallpaper on the background. You could only change the lock screen wallpaper. So you can see the lock screen here. Of course, we have the classic slide to unlock, but you didn't really have anything on the home screen. You could not move applications. We didn't have an app store. You can see YouTube was pre-installed right there. Very, very bare bones. Of course, we did have the camera application though, and you can see the camera opens up right there. The quality, obviously not very great. You can see when we take a picture there, we could do that and it saves right to the Photos application, our camera roll. You could not shoot video, but you could shoot pictures, and you can see there the quality, not very great, but back in 2007, this was a big deal, and this is what started everything. So the next year in 2008, Apple released iPhone OS 2. So this was the successor to iPhone OS 1, and this introduced the App Store for the very first time. So this was a very big deal. You can see the first ever icon for the App Store right there. There were about 500 applications in the App Store when it first launched, and this gave people the opportunity to download apps to their phone for the first time instead of having to sideload them. And you can see here we had the original layout. Of course, it doesn't work anymore, but this was the original layout for the App Store. And since we were able to install applications on our phone, we were also able to move the icons around for the first time. So we could not do that in iPhone OS 1, but you could here with iPhone OS 2. We also got the podcast application. This was inside of the iPod app for the music. We could see podcasts right there. Those were available for the first time as well. And then inside of the Maps application, we also got walking and public transit directions. So this was before Apple used their own proprietary Maps application. So we used Google Maps back then. And then in 2009, Apple released iPhone OS 3. So this would be the last version of iPhone OS before it would switch over to iOS. But we can see here that this actually brought a lot of pretty big features. So first off, we had Spotlight search from the home screen. So we can now swipe over to search for things on the iPhone. So this is obviously added since people were installing applications for the first time. They wanted to be able to find them if they had a lot of apps on their home screen. So that was big. We also got copy and paste for the first time on the iPhone. So we were not able to copy and paste before, but now if we type something, we could double tap right there and copy and paste it if we wanted to. We also got some big changes in the camera application. We were able to shoot video for the first time, and also we got the tap to focus within the camera application. And then we also got push notifications for third-party applications. So now applications, third-party applications, could send you push notifications. And you'll also notice a couple of changes with the default application. So you can see that it used to be text on iPhone OS 1 and 2, but it changed to messages in iPhone OS 3. And then also we got the addition of the voice memos application down there. And then came iOS 4. So in 2010, Apple renamed iPhone OS to iOS and released iOS 4 here, which was a massive update. It brought FaceTime for the iPhone 4 and later. So that was a big deal. Of course, you could video other people with iPhones and talk to them while, on video, like a Skype call back in the day. That was a pretty big deal. Also, we were able to change our wallpaper on the home screen for the very first time. And now that we were all installing applications, we were now able to have folders on the home screen, which is very convenient and very handy when you have a lot of applications. And it was great for organization back then. We also got the introduction of AirPlay and Personal Hotspot for the very first time. Not to mention, probably the biggest feature in iOS 4 was multitasking. So now if you double pressed on the home button, you could see you could multitask between applications. You actually had a dock down here. So this is what we called multitasking back in the day. So obviously it's a much different definition now, but back then we were able to go down here and go into each application rather quickly, whereas before we were not able to do that. And then came iOS 5 in 2011, and this was also a massive update. So this brought iCloud to the iPhone for the first time, and this actually allowed wireless activation. So now, after iOS 5, you would not have to plug in your iPhone and use iTunes to activate it. It would now activate wirelessly, which was extremely convenient. And also, as you can see here, the little 1 on these settings, this was also the introduction of over-the-air software updates. So from iOS 5 on, you would now get software updates from the phone itself instead of having to plug it up into iTunes to update your phone. We also got the introduction to iMessage in 2011 with iOS 5 and also the notification center. So now if we swipe down from this screen right here, from the top of the screen, we would now get the notification center, which would show us different information along with our notifications that we have not seen yet. And you may have also noticed down here in the dock that this was also the first time where Apple named the music application Music instead of iPod. And then came iOS 6, which also introduced quite a few big features that we still have today. So the first one is Siri. So of course we all have a love-hate relationship with Siri, but this was introduced for the first time in iOS 6. It didn't really have too much function back then like it does now. It's still not the best now, but it was very, very bare bones back in 2012 with iOS 6. We also got Apple Maps for the first time. So Apple finally dropped Google Maps and made their own proprietary apps application here with directions. And Google Maps wasn't the only thing that Apple dropped of Google's. We also got the removal of the YouTube application. So before, on iOS 1 through iOS 5, the YouTube app was installed by default, but that was removed with iOS 6 due to competition between Apple and Google. And since iOS 5 saw a lot of success with the FaceTime feature, iOS 6 added cellular support for FaceTime. So now you could call people, video call people over a cellular connection, and you didn't have to be on Wi-Fi. And then came the infamous iOS 7 update in 2013. So this brought a major design overhaul to the iPhone. The icons, pretty much everything about the iPhone looked completely different than it did on iOS 6 and previous versions of iPhone or iOS. We had a lot of new features in this update, a lot of them that were hidden as well, but one of my favorite ones that I use all the time now is the swipe from the left to go back. So this was first introduced with iOS 7. You were not able to do that before. That's one feature I use every single day. We also got the control center for the first time. So if you swipe up from the bottom right here, you would see the control center. So this is the very first iteration of the control center on the iPhone. You can see our toggles down here and up here as well, along with AirPlay and our Now Playing Music. You were not able to customize these toggles or move anything around. It was just set like this, but this was the introduction of that. This also brought the swipe down to search the Spotlight search. We also got things like the AirDrop feature. Activation lock was first introduced with iOS 7, so now when people stole iPhones, it wasn't really easy to just wipe everything off and resell it. We had activation lock, which helped prevent that a little bit. We also got the introduction to CarPlay. So now you could hook your phone up to your head unit, your car, and you would be able to access basically an iPhone on the display of your car. You guys know what CarPlay is now. This was when it was introduced back in 2007. We also got FaceTime audio. So if you had FaceTime, you can now do a FaceTime audio call instead of a video call for better clarity and just better sound on the phone call. This was also the first year where you got the option to install software updates automatically, so you didn't have to manually install them after iOS 7. We also got major improvements to multitasking with iOS 7. So if you double pressed on the home button right here, you could see the multitasking looks a lot better and a lot more like it does now. So iOS 7 really set the stage for almost, a lot of things that we have now, even on iOS 15. But you can see here, we got a little preview of what was inside of those currently open applications, and we were able to close them by just simply swiping up. Whereas on iOS 6, we had to tap and hold right here, and that's how we closed out of the applications. And of course, we didn't get any previews, a little preview of what was inside of that application that was currently open. And then we also got the battery percentage in the status bar for the first time on iOS 7 as well. Then came iOS 8 in 2014. So this brought a ton of new features and functionality to the iPhone. Not quite as much as iOS 7 did, especially on the design front, not much changed year over year, but we did get a lot of functionality. So we got, for the first time, we were able to do what's called quick type. So this is just basically predictive text, where if you type something, it would predict what you wanted to type next. And of course, you guys know this all now, but this was introduced with iOS 8. We also got Apple Pay and Apple Music. So we got the Apple Music service to compete with Spotify back here in 2014. We also got handoff and continuity. So if you double press right here, you would be able to see, you'd have continuity where you could see where you were running, a certain application on another device. You would be able to pick up where you left off from that device. We also got widgets for the first time. So if you swipe down here to the notification center and then go all the way to the bottom, if you tap on edit, you were able to add or remove widgets. So this is what we called widgets back here on iOS 8. Obviously, we have a much different definition of that now, but you were able to move them around and add them if you had any down here from third-party applications if you wanted to. We also got things like audio messages, location sharing, an improved video message interface, better group messaging management, and a way to send multiple images and videos at once inside of the Messages application. You were not able to send more than one photo or video beforehand with iMessage. We also got things like HomeKit and iCloud Drive in iOS 8. So after consecutive years of a lot of changes to the front end and a lot of new features added in iOS, iOS 9 was a little bit different. So this was the first year that Apple opened up the public beta program. So you no longer had to pay to test out the betas on your iPhone. You could just sign up to the public beta program. But we also got a lot of changes to basically AI. So Apple introduced Siri suggestions, and on the back end, Apple would try to guess, which applications are going to open up based on the time of day and what you're doing on your phone. We also got things like low power mode. So if we go into our settings and then go to battery, low power mode, this was first introduced here with iOS 9 in 2015. We also got things like night shift and a lot of other features. We got the ability to search inside of settings here. And then if we go back to the home screen, you can see we got the news application for the first time. And this update overall was just a really big optimization update. So Apple trimmed down the size of a lot of the built-in applications and applications in the App Store. The battery life improved. A lot of people were just really satisfied with iOS 9, despite the fact that it didn't really have a ton of forward-facing features. And then came iOS 10 in 2016. So this gave us the option to delete default applications. You can see there, this was the first time we were able to delete applications that came pre-installed on our device. We got iMessage applications. So now in an iMessage, if you go to the App Store here, you were able to, use these applications and play games with other people with iPhones. Siri also integrated with third-party applications with iOS 10. So you were able to call a Lyft, call an Uber, different things straight from Siri, straight from using Siri, which was something brand new because developers just got access to this for the first time with iOS 10. We finally got lyrics for Apple Music inside of the music application. We also got the voicemail transcription. So you guys know when you get a voicemail, it kind of just puts in text what was said in that voicemail. That was first introduced with iOS 10. The Maps application was much improved. And we also got the new Home application, which would be the way that we access all of our HomeKit devices. And then came iOS 11 in 2017. So this was a big update for the iPad because you got drag and drop support, split screen application, the Files application, and support for handwriting with the Apple Pencil. But it was also a pretty big update for iOS 11 as well for the iPhone because we got things like AirPlay 2. The control center was completely redesigned, so you can see it looks more reminiscent to what it looks like now in present day. This was first introduced with iOS 11. Same with the notification center. If we swipe down, you can see the notification center is also more reminiscent of what we have right now. It switched over from that iOS 10 design. The App Store got completely reworked in iOS 11, so you can see this also looks very reminiscent to what we have now. So iOS 11 really set the stage for, iOS 11 through iOS 15, because a lot of things look very similar, but this was a big switch at the time. Even on the lock screen as well, we have some changes. So if we lock the phone and go to the lock screen right here, there are some changes here on the lock screen as well, because now the notifications just show up right here instead of having to swipe down while on the lock screen like you had to with iOS 10. We got the Files application for the first time, and then also a pretty big feature in iOS 11 is inside of our settings. If we go down to Safari right here and then go down, you can see that we got the Prevent Cross-Site Tracking feature for the first time on the iPhone. So this would prevent, sites from tracking you across your phone and onto different websites. So this is a pretty big feature when it came out for your privacy. And then came iOS 12 in 2018, and this was mainly a refinement update with a focus on stability and performance. So Apple really touted this update as being a big improvement over iOS 11 in terms of performance, and it actually lived up to that. It was very solid in terms of performance, but we also got some new features on this update as well. And one of the big ones was the addition of the Shortcuts application. So you guys might remember on my channel, if you're an OG, I made videos on Shortcuts right when it came out on iOS 12. It was very bare bones at first. You really couldn't do a ton, but it's gotten a lot better over time. But that was first introduced right here. We also got grouped notifications for the first time in the notification center. We got the screen time feature for the first time, which would allow us to track where we were spending the most time on our phone and also block certain websites and also set limits for applications. We got group FaceTime, which would allow you to FaceTime up to 32 people at a time. We also got the introduction of Memoji characters, so you could kind of put your mask on, your Memoji character over your face while on the FaceTime call, which is pretty cool. The Stocks application got a complete overhaul and looked a lot better and a lot more modern. We got things like Waze support for CarPlay, so you can finally get Waze or Google Maps on your CarPlay device, and some minor changes inside of the Photos application like the For You tab. So again, this was mainly a refinement update, but there were quite a few new features as well. And then we got iOS 13 in 2019. So this was a big update for a lot of reasons. So first off, this was the introduction to iPadOS. So this is the first year that Apple separated iOS and iPadOS for the iPad. So this was big. We also got the big update for dark mode. So dark mode finally was a thing with iOS 13. So if we go into our settings here, you could also set this inside a control center if you customize the controls. We had a dark mode toggle right here where we could just simply put our device into dark mode and it would make all the menus dark, which is pretty neat. Also, if you went back to the display and brightness section right here, you have the option to turn this to automatic to make it dark until sunrise or vice versa, light until sunset. We got a complete overhaul to applications like Reminders, Notes, Safari, and Mail. So lots of big changes to some of the default applications, and also apps just opened a lot faster and Face ID unlocked a lot faster with iOS 13. So really back-to-back refinement updates with iOS 12 and 13, but 13 did add dark mode, which was something that we have been requesting for a very long time. And then came iOS 14 in 2020, which introduced a ton of massive changes to the iPhone. So first off, as you can see right here, we got home screen widgets. We also got the app library. So if we go down here all the way to the right, we got the app library where you can search different applications by alphabetical order or just search for them right up there up top. We also got things like the ability to hide applications. So if I wanted to hide TikTok, I could just go to remove application and just remove from home screen, and it would just hide that application from the home screen. We also finally got picture-in-picture for video or FaceTime calls. We got a new incoming call UI that didn't take up the full screen, along with a new Siri UI that also did not take up the full screen. It was just this little circle down at the bottom of the home screen or whatever application you were in. We got a lot of changes inside of the Messages application. This was the first time you were able to reply to certain messages. So if you tapped on it, you could do the reactions, and of course you could reply in line right there as well, which is very handy for group chats. You could also pin conversations to the top of your Messages application. You could also search for emojis for the first time. So if you wanted to search for like the vomit emoji, you could search for it right there. We got the Translate application. We got spatial and lossless audio for the AirPods and AirPods Pro. And we also got a pretty big feature inside of settings here, a privacy feature. So if we go to settings, privacy, and then down to tracking, you can see we finally got the option to allow apps to request to track So this was a big feature. Of course, this made Facebook go crazy. They lost a lot of revenue because of this, but you can see here it says allow apps to apps to track your activity across other companies' apps and websites. So this would prevent other applications from seeing what you do on your phone when you go to other applications or other websites. So this is a huge stance from Apple in terms of privacy, and it did make a big rumble, in the space of, other applications that relied on this information to make money, like Facebook. So this is a massive, massive privacy feature. And then also if we go to location services here and we want to any type of application here, you have the option to turn on or off your precise location. Oh, and how can I forget about one of the most viral features in iOS 14, and that is back tap, which would allow you to have what people on TikTok would call an invisible button, or a hidden button on your iPhone. So if you double tap the back of your iPhone, you can see here, it will go to the home screen. That is the back tap feature. It's pretty cool. Of course, we know about it now, but that was new and really cool with iOS 14. And now to present time, depending on when you're watching this, iOS 15. So iOS 15 also brings a lot of big new features and changes to the iPhone. Pretty much the biggest one that everybody noticed right away is the redesigned Safari. So Safari, the address bar is now down at the bottom here in Safari. You can change that. If you tap on these A's right here, you can change it back to the top. So this is a pretty cool, pretty bold change by Apple. I really like it. You can see how it kind of disappears into the web page as well. So Safari is much improved in iOS 15. We got the introduction to focus modes inside of the control center that would allow you to only receive notifications from certain applications and certain people when you go into these focus modes. We got SharePlay for FaceTime, which would allow you to experience things with friends over FaceTime, like TV shows, movies, or music. We got the live text feature, which would allow us to copy text from an image in real time or from one that was already taken. You just copy and paste the text from there and paste it into a note. Of course, we did also get visual lookup, which would allow us to identify certain animals if we swipe up right here, or plants, or just different objects, and it would tell you what breed of dog it is or what kind of cat it is, which is pretty neat. We also get another really big privacy change inside of iOS 15. So if we go to privacy and then down to the bottom to app privacy report, this will let us know when an application or a website accesses our contacts, our media library, our microphone, our camera, anything that would, be invasive or get access to any of our data. You will know about it right here in the app privacy report. So this is also another really big feature in iOS 15, a really big stance towards privacy. Oh, and not to mention the Spotlight search has also gotten a lot smarter here with iOS 15 as well. So if I search for something like Crash Bandicoot, for example, if I search Crash Bandicoot, I will be able to actually download and install the application straight from the Spotlight search. It also will search all over the web for Crash Bandicoot. You can see web images and everything here from the actual internet. It shows up right here inside of the Spotlight search without having to go into Safari. So Spotlight search is so much more improved here in iOS 15. And as you see in this video, it's really come a long way. But anyways, guys, there you have it. That is the evolution of iOS from iPhone OS 1 to iOS 15. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, I would appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up. And of course, make sure to subscribe for a lot more videos coming comparing all of the iOS versions. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.